Professor Zefkari's crystalline exoskeleton shifted colors from deep blue to warning amber as Marcus Chen's words echoed through the lecture hall. The Galactic Academy's Bio-Survival Studies Amphitheater had hosted countless debates over the centuries, but never had a first-year exchange student challenged fundamental xenobiological law with such casual confidence. Marcus remained seated, his dark eyes steady as hundreds of alien faces turned toward him. The Velkari delegation clicked their mandibles in disapproval, while the gaseous Netherians swirled with agitated patterns. Even the usually calm Andromedans shifted uncomfortably in their environmental suits. This human had just suggested that established science was wrong. "Mr. Chen," Professor Zefkari said, his voice resonating through the translation matrices embedded in every student's neural interface, "perhaps you misunderstood the lesson. We are discussing Class 7 magnetic storms, not the minor electromagnetic fluctuations your homeworld experiences during what you call aurora events." Marcus stood slowly, his movements deliberate and measured. At barely 6 feet tall, he was dwarfed by most of the beings around him, yet something in his posture commanded attention. "I understood perfectly, Professor. You said no known species could survive direct exposure to a Class 7 storm. I'm suggesting that humans could." The lecture hall erupted into chaos. The Velkari representative, Ambassador Thrixnow, shot to his feet with a sound like breaking glass. "Preposterous! The electromagnetic flux would disrupt neural pathways within seconds. Even our most advanced shielding technology can barely protect starship hulls from such phenomena." "The human speaks from ignorance," added Dr. Vagarith. Silfathara, the Andromedian xenobiologist whose research had established the current safety protocols. Class 7 storms generate magnetic fields exceeding 50,000 Gas with flux variations of 10,000 Gas per second. The induced electrical currents would literally cook neural tissue. Marcus waited for the voices to die down before responding. "You're thinking about this wrong. You're all assuming that survival means maintaining normal biological function throughout the event. What if survival just means living through it?" Professor Zefkari's eyes narrowed to pinpricks. "Explain." "Humans have a saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But we also have another. One, sometimes you have to break before you can bend." Marcus pulled out a small device, his personal datapad, and projected holographic images into the center of the amphitheater. The first image showed Earth's magnetic field, the familiar dipolar pattern that protected the planet from solar radiation. Earth sits in what you'd classify as a moderate magnetic environment. Our planetary field strength averages 0.5 Gauss. But here's what makes it interesting. The hologram shifted, showing historical data stretching back millions of years. Every few 100,000 years, our magnetic poles reverse. During the transition, our planetary field strength drops to nearly zero, and the field lines become chaotic. For several thousand years at a time, Earth's surface experiences magnetic conditions that would classify as low-level Class 2 storms. Dr. Silfara leaned forward, her silver features reflecting the holographic display. "Impossible. No complex life could evolve under such conditions. And yet, here I am." Marcus gestured to himself with a slight smile. "Humans evolved during a period of unusual magnetic instability. Our ancestors survived multiple pole reversals, magnetic excursions, and solar superflares that would have sterilized worlds with stable magnetic environments." He changed the display to show human brain scans, the neural pathways highlighted in brilliant colors. "Our nervous system developed redundancy systems, error correction, and recovery protocols that your species never needed. When a human brain experiences electromagnetic disruption, it doesn't just shut down, it adapts." The silence in the amphitheater was profound. Professor Zefkari's color had shifted to a deep purple, indicating intense concentration. "You're suggesting that humans possess natural electromagnetic resistance?" "Not resistance," Marcus corrected. "Resilience. There's a difference. A Velkari neural network is like a precision instrument, incredibly efficient but fragile when disrupted. A human brain is like..." He paused, searching for the right analogy. "Like a city built to survive earthquakes. The buildings might sway, some might even fall down, but the city survives and rebuilds." Ambassador Thrixnall's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation among his species. Even if this were true, which I doubt, a Class 7 storm would exceed any evolutionary adaptation. The electromagnetic flux would induce currents strong enough to stop a human heart. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "You're probably right about the heart stopping. But human hearts can be restarted. Our neural tissue can regenerate from traumatic electromagnetic damage. Our bones and muscles can function even when the nervous system is temporarily disrupted. He paused, letting that sink in. The question isn't whether we'd survive unharmed. The question is whether we'd survive at all. The implications of his words rippled through the audience like a shockwave. Species that had evolved on magnetically stable worlds protected by powerful planetary fields or advanced technology had never needed to develop such crude, brute force survival mechanisms. Their biology was elegant and efficient, but perhaps too specialized for extreme conditions. Doctor. Silthara's voice carried a note of skeptical curiosity. Mr. Bill Barra Bill. Chen, are you proposing that we test this theory? I'm not just proposing it, Marcus replied, his voice calm but determined. I'm volunteering for it. The amphitheater exploded into protests and arguments. Several species representatives began speaking at once, their voices blending into a cacophony of objection and disbelief. Through it all, Professor Zethkari remained silent, his alien features unreadable as he studied the young human who had just offered to risk his life to prove a point. Finally, the professor raised one crystalline appendage, and the room fell silent. Mr. Chen, what you're suggesting is not just dangerous. It's potentially suicidal. Even if your theories about human electromagnetic resilience are correct, exposure to a Class 7 storm could cause permanent brain damage, organ failure, or death. Marcus met the professor's gaze without flinching. Professor, with respect, every single class I've attended here has emphasized the same thing. The universe is hostile, unpredictable, and deadly to biological life. You've all developed amazing technology to protect yourselves from that hostility. But sometimes, technology fails. He gestured toward the viewing ports that showed the stars beyond the Academy station. Out there, ships get caught in magnetic storms. Colonies lose their shielding. Rescue missions have to operate in impossible conditions. Right now, when that happens, people die, because every species in the galaxy believes survival is impossible. But what if it isn't? The human's words carried a weight that surprised even him. In the weeks since arriving at the Academy, Marcus had felt increasingly isolated by the fundamental differences between human and alien thinking. Where other species saw obstacles, humans saw challenges. Where they saw certain death, humans saw acceptable risk. If I'm wrong, Marcus continued, then you'll have data on exactly how a human dies under Class 7 electromagnetic conditions. That information could save lives by helping you design better safety protocols. If I'm right, he paused, a small smile playing across his features. Well, then you'll have to rewrite some textbooks. Professor Zethkari's color shifted through several hues before settling on a deep green that his species associated with profound contemplation. The ethical implications of what the human was proposing were staggering. The Academy had strict protocols against endangering student lives, but it also had an obligation to pursue scientific advancement. Mr. Chen, the professor said finally, assuming for a moment that such an experiment could be ethically justified. How exactly would you propose to conduct it? Class 7 magnetic storms are not phenomena that can be safely generated in laboratory conditions. Marcus had clearly been prepared for this question. There's a natural class discover in the Helix Nebula about 3 days' journey from here. The storm has been stable for over 50 years, making it predictable and relatively safe for observation from a distance. A shielded research vessel could approach the storm's edge and deploy a small, unshielded pod directly into the electromagnetic flux. The audacity of the proposal left most of the audience speechless. Dr. Silthara was the first to find her voice. You want to fly directly into one of the most dangerous phenomena known to science, with no protection, just to prove a theoretical point. Not just to prove a point, Marcus replied. To expand the boundaries of what we think is possible for biological survival. Every species here has achieved greatness by pushing beyond what seemed impossible. The Valkyrie learned to manipulate crystalline matrices at the quantum level. The Andromedans mastered energy-matter conversion. The Netherians transcended physical form entirely. He looked around the amphitheater, meeting as many alien gazers as he could. Humans survived by refusing to accept limitations. We walked out of Africa when logic said we should stay. We crossed oceans when wisdom said they were uncrossable. We reached for the stars when physics said it was impossible. This is just the next step. The weight of his words settled over the assembly like a blanket of charged particles. In the silence that followed, each species contemplated what they had just heard. This young human wasn't just proposing a dangerous experiment, he was articulating a fundamental difference in how humans approach the universe itself. Professor Zethkari's crystalline form had begun to emit a faint luminescence, a sign of intense mental activity among his kind. Mr. Chen, if, and I stress if, such an experiment were to be approved, it would require extensive preparation, multiple safety protocols, and the involvement of every major xenobiological institute in the galaxy. The implications of success or failure would reshape our understanding of biological limits, Marcus nodded solemnly. I understand, Professor. I'm not asking for a quick answer. I'm just asking that you consider the possibility that we might all be wrong about what's impossible. As the lecture period drew to a close, students and faculty members began filing out of the amphitheater in clusters of animated discussion. The humans' proposal had shattered comfortable assumptions about biological limits and forced everyone to confront the possibility that their carefully constructed safety margins might be unnecessarily conservative. Marcus remained in his seat as the amphitheater emptied, staring out at the stars beyond the viewing ports. Somewhere out there, in the roiling electromagnetic chaos of the Helix Nebula, waited either vindication or death. For a human who had grown up on stories of explorers and pioneers, the choice seemed obvious. Professor Zethkari approached as Marcus finally stood to leave. Chen, a word of advice from someone who has studied biological systems for 3 centuries. Courage and stupidity often look remarkably similar from the outside. Are you certain you can tell the difference? Marcus considered the question seriously before answering. Professor, the only thing I'm certain of is that every major advancement in galactic civilization came from someone who couldn't tell the difference either. The professor's crystalline features shifted through several color patterns before settling on what Marcus had learned indicated grudging respect. I will be in touch, Mr. Chen. Your proposal will require careful consideration by the Academy Council and consultation with xenobiological experts across the galaxy. Do not expect a quick decision. As Marcus walked toward the amphitheater exit, he could feel the weight of hundreds of alien gazers following him. Word of his proposal was already spreading through the Academy's gossip networks, carried by species whose communication methods ranged from biochemical pheromones to quantum entanglement patterns. By morning, every student and faculty member on the station would know about the human who had volunteered to fly into a magnetic storm. What none of them could know was that Marcus had already begun making his own preparations. Human nature, he had learned, was often best demonstrated when humans stopped asking permission and started taking action. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus Chen's declaration in Professor Zethakari's lecture hall, and the Galactic Academy buzzed with controversy. The proposal had triggered heated debates in every department, from theoretical xenobiology to practical survival engineering. What had started as one human's bold challenge had evolved into a galaxy-wide examination of the fundamental assumptions underlying interstellar safety protocols. Marcus sat in his cramped dormitory quarters, surrounded by holographic displays showing electromagnetic field equations, human physiological data, and technical specifications for storm-resistant equipment. His roommate, a centaurian named Flux, whose body resembled a collection of floating geometric shapes, hovered near the window, expressing concern through rapid color changes. Marcus' friend, the probability calculations remain unfavorable. Flux communicated through harmonic vibrations that the translation matrix converted to speech. Even accounting for human electromagnetic resilience factors, survival likelihood in Class 7 storm approaches statistical zero. Marcus looked up from his calculations, rubbing his eyes. The past weeks had been a blur of research, interviews with Academy officials, and heated discussions with xenobiologists from across the galaxy. The numbers don't account for human adaptability under extreme stress, Flux. Our biology doesn't follow the same rules as most species. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Professor Zethkari's crystalline face appeared in the holographic display, his colors cycling through formal greeting patterns. Mr. Chen, please report to Conference Chamber 7. The Academy Council has reached a preliminary decision regarding your proposal. Marcus felt his heart rate spike, a physiological response that would have been impossible for many of the Academy's other species. On my way, Professor. The walk to Conference Chamber 7 felt longer than usual, despite the station's efficient transport tubes. Marcus passed clusters of students who stopped their conversations to stare at him. Word of his proposal had spread far beyond the Academy, reaching news networks and scientific institutions throughout the galaxy. He had become, much to his discomfort, a celebrity of sorts. The conference chamber was packed beyond capacity. Marcus recognized representatives from the Valkyrie Biological Institute, the Andromedine Science Consortium, and at least a dozen other major scientific organizations. Ambassador Thrixnal stood near the entrance, his crystalline features reflecting the chamber's lights as he spoke in rapid clicks to a group of Valkyrie officials. Professor Zefkari gestured for Marcus to take a seat at the center of the chamber. Around him, representatives from dozens of species created a kaleidoscope of alien forms and colors. The weight of their collective attention was almost overwhelming. "Mr. Chen," began Director Valpius, the Academy's highest-ranking official, "your proposal has generated unprecedented debate within the galactic scientific community. The implications of your theory about human electromagnetic resilience extend far beyond academic curiosity." The director, an Etherian whose gaseous form shifted between blue and purple, continued, "If humans can indeed survive Class 7 magnetic storm exposure, it would revolutionize our approach to space exploration, emergency response, and even terraforming operations. However, the risks involved in testing this theory are enormous." Dr. Silthara spoke from her position among the Andromedean delegation. "Our analysis suggests that even if Mr. Quitbore Chen's theories about human neural resilience are correct, the electromagnetic forces involved in a Class 7 storm could cause catastrophic organ damage. The induced electrical currents would be equivalent to multiple lightning strikes." Marcus stood, his human height making him shorter than most beings in the room, but his voice carried clearly. "Dr. Silthara, you're correct about the electromagnetic forces involved. But you're still thinking about this from an alien perspective. Human organs can survive massive electrical trauma. We have documented cases of humans surviving multiple lightning strikes, electrical accidents that should have been fatal, and electromagnetic exposure that would kill most species instantly." He activated his personal data pad, projecting historical records into the chamber's holographic display system. Roy Sullivan, a human park ranger, was struck by lightning 7 separate times throughout his life. He not only survived each incident but continued working in conditions where lightning strikes were likely. This isn't an isolated case. Human medical records contain thousands of similar examples. The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs. Ambassador Thrixnell's mandibles clicked rapidly. "You're suggesting that humans routinely survive what would be considered lethal electromagnetic trauma?" "I'm not suggesting it," Marcus replied firmly. "I'm documenting it. Human physiology evolved to handle electrical disruption because our homeworld subjects us to it regularly. Every thunderstorm, every lightning strike, every magnetic fluctuation during solar flares, Earth constantly tests human electromagnetic tolerance."
Professor Zefkari's color shifted to deep contemplative green.
"Mr. Chen, even accepting your documentation of human electromagnetic resistance, a Class 7 storm represents forces orders of magnitude beyond terrestrial lightning phenomena." Marcus nodded. "Which is exactly why this test is necessary. No one knows what the upper limit of human electromagnetic tolerance actually is. We've never had the opportunity to test it under controlled conditions at these intensity levels." Director Valthis swirled thoughtfully, her gaseous form creating complex patterns. "The Academy Council has consulted with safety experts, medical professionals, and ethical review boards across 17 star systems. The consensus is that such an experiment would be unconscionably dangerous under normal circumstances." Marcus felt his heart sink, but the director continued. "However, these are not normal circumstances. 3 separate incidents in the past month have resulted in spacecraft being caught in unexpected magnetic storm systems. In each case, all crew members died because current safety protocols assume that biological survival is impossible under such conditions." The director's form shifted to a more formal configuration. "If there's even a possibility that biological beings could survive electromagnetic exposure at Class 7 levels, we have an ethical obligation to explore that possibility." The chamber fell silent. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat in the sudden quiet. "Therefore," Director Voltis continued, "the Academy Council has approved a modified version of your proposed experiment, subject to extensive safety protocols and monitoring systems." The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Several species representatives began speaking at once, their voices creating a cacophony of objection and support. Through the noise, Marcus caught fragments of translated conversation about liability, ethics, and the precedent such an experiment would set. Professor Zefkari raised an appendage, calling for silence. "Mr. Chan, the approved experiment will take place in 4 weeks at the Helix Nebula magnetic storm system you identified. However, the conditions will be strictly controlled. You will be accompanied by a full medical monitoring team. Emergency response vessels will remain on standby just outside the storm system, and the exposure duration will be limited to precisely calculated intervals." Dr. Silthara interjected. "Additionally, the experiment will be conducted in stages. Initial exposure will last only 30 seconds at the storm's outer edge, where electromagnetic intensity reaches minimum class 7 levels. If you survive that exposure without permanent damage, subsequent tests may be conducted at higher intensities. Marcus felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. This was exactly what he had hoped for. But the reality of flying into a magnetic storm was beginning to feel very real and very dangerous. What kind of safety equipment will be provided? That's where this becomes particularly interesting, replied Dr. Valtherin, the Academy's chief medical officer. Standard electromagnetic shielding would defeat the purpose of the experiment. Instead, you'll be equipped with passive monitoring systems that won't interfere with the storm's effects on your biology, and a small emergency beacon that will activate only if your vital signs cease entirely. Ambassador Thrixnell stepped forward, his crystalline form catching the chamber's light. Mr. Chen, I must ask directly, why are you willing to risk your life for this experiment? What do you hope to gain? Marcus considered the question carefully. The honest answer was complex, involving human nature, scientific curiosity, and something deeper that he wasn't sure the assembled aliens would understand. Ambassador, he said finally, humans have a concept called paying it forward. We do things not just for immediate benefit, but because they might help others in the future. Every human who ever walked into uncharted territory, flew an experimental aircraft, or volunteered for a dangerous mission was paying it forward for the rest of humanity. He looked around the chamber, meeting as many alien gazers as he could. But this is bigger than just humanity. If biological beings can survive in conditions we currently consider impossible, it opens up new possibilities for everyone. Maybe Valkyrie could work in high electromagnetic environments without heavy shielding. Maybe Andromedians could explore magnetar systems directly. Maybe Netherians could exist in forms we haven't even imagined yet. The chamber had grown quiet again, but this time the silence felt thoughtful rather than shocked. There's something else, Marcus continued. Humans have always believed that the universe is trying to kill us. Our homeworld is geologically active, climatically unstable, and biologically dangerous. We developed the assumption that survival means adapting to hostile conditions rather than avoiding them entirely. Most of your species developed the opposite assumption, that survival means creating safe, controlled environments and avoiding dangerous conditions. Doctor. Silthara leaned forward, her silver features reflecting genuine curiosity. You're suggesting that these different evolutionary strategies might complement each other?
Exactly.
Your species have achieved incredible technological advancement by minimizing risk and maximizing safety. That's given you faster-than-light travel, artificial intelligence, and the ability to transform entire worlds. But there are still situations where technology isn't enough, where someone has to face dangerous conditions with nothing but biological resilience. Professor Zethkari's colors shifted through several patterns before settling on what Marcus had learned indicated serious consideration. Mr. Chen, if your experiment succeeds, it will fundamentally change how we approach dangerous situations throughout the galaxy. If it fails, Marcus finished, then you'll have definitive data on human electromagnetic tolerance limits, which could still save lives by improving safety protocols and emergency response procedures. Direct evolve this swirled into a formal pattern. Very well. The experiment will proceed as outlined. Dr. Veltharin will coordinate medical monitoring. Professor Zethkari will oversee scientific observation, and the Velkari Institute will provide technical support for electromagnetic measurement. As the meeting concluded and beings began filing out of the chamber, Marcus remained seated, staring at his hands. In 4 weeks, he would either prove that human biology could survive conditions that every other species considered impossible, or he would become the galaxy's most dramatic example of why such conditions should be avoided. Dr. Belton approached as the chamber emptied. The Academy's chief medical officer resembled a metallic tree with branching appendages that served various sensory and manipulative functions. Chen, I will need to conduct extensive baseline medical examinations over the next few weeks. We must document your physiology in precise detail, so we can accurately assess any changes caused by electromagnetic exposure. Marcus nodded. Whatever you need, Doctor. I must also ask, do you have any family or close relationships that should be notified about this experiment? The Academy's ethical guidelines require that we inform individuals who might be affected by potential negative outcomes. The question hit Marcus unexpectedly hard. His parents back on Earth would be terrified if they knew what he was planning. His sister would probably try to have him declared mentally incompetent. His girlfriend Sarah, also a student at the Academy but in the engineering department, already thought he took too many unnecessary risks. I'll handle the personal notifications, Marcus said quietly. As he walked back to his dormitory, Marcus reflected on the weight of what he had set in motion. 4 weeks to prepare for an experiment that would either expand the boundaries of biological possibility or provide a very dramatic demonstration of their limits. Either way, the galaxy would learn something new about what it meant to survive in an hostile universe. The corridor outside his quarters was unusually crowded. As Marcus approached, he realized that dozens of students from various species had gathered, apparently waiting for him. The crowd included Valkyrie, Andromedines, Centaurians, and several species he didn't immediately recognize. Flux hovered near the door, his geometric form cycling through agitated colors. Marcus, friend, many beings desire conversation with you regarding storm-flying experiment. A young Valkyrie student stepped forward, her crystalline features reflecting nervous energy. Mr. Chen, we wanted to express support for your experiment. Many of us have been researching your proposal, and we believe it could lead to significant advances in extreme environment survival. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the unexpected show of support. Thank you, but I hope you all understand that this is extremely dangerous. I might not survive. An Andromedine student, her silver form gleaming under the corridor lights, spoke up. We understand the risks, but we also understand the potential benefits. If you succeed, you'll prove that biological limitations are not as absolute as we thought. The crowd murmured agreement in a dozen different alien languages, creating a harmony of support that transcended species barriers. Marcus realized that his experiment had become more than just a test of human electromagnetic resistance. It had become a symbol of the willingness to challenge accepted limitations and explore new possibilities. Thank you all, he said finally. Your support means more than you know. Whatever happens in 4 weeks, we'll learn something important about the universe and our place in it. As the crowd dispersed, Marcus entered his quarters and sat heavily on his bunk. Flux hovered nearby, emanating concern through color patterns and harmonic vibrations. Flux, Marcus said quietly. Do you think I'm crazy for doing this? His roommate's form shifted through several configurations before settling into a pattern Marcus had learned indicated deep thought. Marcus, friend, Centaurian philosophy suggests that sanity and wisdom are often incompatible. Wise beings accept limitations. Insane beings ignore them. Perhaps humans succeed because you confuse the two concepts. Marcus smiled despite his anxiety. In 4 weeks, he would find out whether human confusion was a fatal flaw or an evolutionary advantage. Either way, the answer would be illuminating. The research vessel Harmonic Convergence dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Helix Nebula, and Marcus Chen got his first direct view of what he had volunteered to fly into. The class, 7 magnetic storms stretched across 17 light minutes of space, a churning maelstrom of electromagnetic energy that made the ship's sensors scream warnings in a dozen alien languages. Sweet mother of crystalline matrices, whispered Lieutenant Kixthara, the Valkyrie navigation officer, her translucent form flickering with reflected energy patterns. The electromagnetic flux readings are off our measurement scales. Captain Vorthak, an experienced Andromedine whose silver features had seen decades of deep space exploration, studied the sensor data with growing concern. Mr. Chen, I must state formally that this storm system exceeds every safety parameter in my 30 years of command experience. The electromagnetic intensity spikes are measuring 75,000 Gauss with flux variations of 15,000 Gauss per second. Marcus stood at the observation deck's viewing port, watching sheets of electromagnetic energy ripple through space like aurora on steroids. The storm was beautiful in a terrifying way. Colors beyond human visual spectrum translated into brilliant displays that hurt to look at directly. Captain, those numbers are exactly what we expected based on long-range observations. Dr. Veltarin approached from the medical bay, his metallic branches carrying various monitoring devices. Mr. Chen, final medical preparations are complete. The passive monitoring system will track your vital signs, neural activity, and electromagnetic exposure levels throughout the experiment. However, I must remind you that we cannot provide any active medical intervention once you enter the storm. Professor Zeth Kari emerged from the Scientific Observation Center, his crystalline form cycling through deep purple contemplation patterns. The storm's behavior is remarkably stable. We have identified optimal exposure coordinates where the electromagnetic intensity remains consistent at minimum class 5-7. However, I must emphasize that minimum class 7 still represents forces that would instantly disable most known biological systems. Marcus nodded, trying to project calm confidence while his heart raced with very human anxiety. The past 4 weeks had been a blur of medical examinations, equipment preparation, and intense study of electromagnetic effects on biological systems. Every test had confirmed the same basic facts. What he was about to attempt should kill him within seconds. Sarah Chen, no relation, despite the shared surname, approached from the engineering section where she had been making final preparations to the experimental pod. Her human features showed the strain of weeks spent designing safety systems for an inherently unsafe mission. Marcus, the pod's passive monitoring systems are online. The emergency beacon will activate if your vital signs drop below critical thresholds. But remember, rescue attempts in Class 7 conditions are theoretical at best. Marcus turned to face the assembled team of scientists, medical officers and engineers from a dozen different species. They had all volunteered to risk their careers and reputations on this experiment, and several had argued strenuously against it right up until departure from the academy. "I know you all think this is insane," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly through the ship's translation systems. "You're probably right. But sometimes insane is exactly what the universe needs." He moved toward the shuttle bay where the experimental pod waited. The device was barely large enough for one human, equipped with minimal life support, passive monitoring systems, and absolutely no electromagnetic shielding. It looked like a coffin with viewing ports. Ambassador Thrixnell had insisted on joining the expedition as an observer. Despite the obvious dangers to his crystalline physiology from the storm's electromagnetic overflow, he approached Marcus with measured steps, his form reflecting the bay's lights in complex patterns. "Mr. Chen, the Valkyrie Science Council asked me to express their admiration for your courage, even as they question your wisdom. Your species continues to confound our understanding of rational behavior." Marcus grinned. "Ambassador, if humans were rational, we'd still be living in caves on Earth." The pod's hatch stood open like a mouth waiting to swallow him. Marcus paused at the threshold, looking back at the team that had made this moment possible. In a few minutes, he would either prove that human biology could survive conditions that terrified advanced alien civilizations, or he would become the galaxy's most spectacular example of why such conditions should be avoided. Dr. Veltarine performed final medical checks, his branching appendages wielding scanners that read Marcus's physiological state in unprecedented detail. Baseline readings are normal for human parameters. Heart rate elevated, but within expected stress ranges. Neural activity shows typical human pre-stress patterns. Blood chemistry optimal. Sarah stepped forward, her engineering pad displaying the pod's system status. All monitoring systems green. Communication array tested and functional. Emergency beacon armed and ready. Life support calculated for 2 hours maximum, though exposure time should not exceed 30 seconds for initial test. Professor Zethkari's colors shifted to formal scientific observation mode. "Mr. Chen, once you enter the storm system, we will monitor your condition through passive sensors only. We cannot intervene until you exit the electromagnetic field or the emergency beacon activates. You will be entirely dependent on your biological systems for survival." Marcus climbed into the pod, feeling the cushioned interior conform to his human physiology. The monitoring systems activated automatically, and he could feel sensors establishing baseline readings for every biological function, from neural activity to cellular electrical potential. "Comms check," Sarah said through the pod's speakers. "Loud and clear," Marcus replied, his voice carrying back to the ship's systems. Captain Vorthek's voice came through the communication system with formal authority. "Mr. Pigeon, Chen, you are cleared for deployment. Pod launch in 30 seconds. May whatever gods watch over humans be with you." The shuttle bay's magnetic containment field shimmered as it prepared to release the pod into space. Marcus watched the harmonic convergence through his viewing port, seeing alien faces pressed against observation windows. Dozens of the galaxy's finest scientists were about to watch him either make history or become it. 10 seconds to launch, Sarah announced. Marcus felt the familiar human response to mortal danger. Heightened awareness, increased heart rate, and the strange calm that came from accepting unavoidable risk. His species had evolved these responses over millions of years of facing deadly situations with nothing but biological resources. 5 seconds. The pod's engines fired, pushing Marcus away from the ship toward the edge of the magnetic storm. Through his viewing port, he could see the harmonic convergence rapidly shrinking as the pod accelerated toward the churning electromagnetic maelstrom ahead. "Pod away," Sarah confirmed. All systems nominal. Approaching storm perimeter in 2 minutes. As the pod flew toward the storm, Marcus watched the electromagnetic displays grow more intense. What had looked like beautiful aurora from a distance now revealed itself as barely contained chaos. Sheets of energy crackled across space, and the pod's simple instruments began registering electromagnetic forces that made Earth's most violent thunderstorms look like gentle spring rain. 60 seconds to contact, Professor Zethkari announced. Electromagnetic readings are climbing rapidly. Mr. Chen, how do you feel? Like I'm about to find out if humans are as tough as we think we are, Marcus replied, surprised by how steady his voice sounded. The storm's edge approached like a wall of liquid lightning. Marcus could see individual electromagnetic flux lines writhing through space, patterns of energy that would have been invisible to most alien species, but which human eyes could detect due to evolutionary adaptations for reading electrical patterns in storm systems. 30 seconds to contact. Beginning final monitoring sequence, Dr. Velfatin announced. All biological systems reading normal, neural activity elevated but stable. Marcus gripped the pod's restraint system and focused on controlling his breathing. Human meditation techniques had evolved from millions of years of facing natural disasters, and right now he needed every adaptation his species had developed. 10 seconds. Electromagnetic field strength approaching minimum class. 7 threshold. The pod hit the storm's edge like a ship hitting a tsunami. Every nerve in Marcus's body exploded with electrical fire as electromagnetic forces slammed into his nervous system. The pod's viewing port blazed with energy discharges that would have blinded most alien species, but human eyes automatically adapted, pupils contracting and neural pathways rerouting to handle the overwhelming visual input. The electromagnetic field induced massive electrical currents through Marcus's body, causing every muscle to contract simultaneously. His heart stopped for 3.7 seconds as the cardiac electrical system reset itself, then resumed beating in an irregular but functional rhythm. His brain experienced what would have been catastrophic neural disruption for any other known species. Synapses fired randomly as electromagnetic induction overwhelmed normal neural pathways. For 12.3 seconds, Marcus's consciousness fragmented into disconnected sensory inputs and memory fragments. But human neural architecture had evolved redundancy systems that no other species possessed. As primary neural pathways became overwhelmed, secondary and tertiary networks automatically engaged. His brain began rerouting signals around damaged areas, establishing new connections faster than the electromagnetic field could disrupt them. Through the pod's communication system, the monitoring team heard what no alien species could have survived: a human being remaining conscious and functional while exposed to forces that should have reduced his nervous system to random electrical noise. Status report, Sarah called out, her voice tight with worry. Marcus tried to speak, but his vocal cords were spasming from electromagnetic induction. It took 3 attempts to form words. Still, here, everything hurts. Vision is wrong colors. But I'm alive. On the harmonic convergence, every scientist and medical officer stared at their instruments in disbelief. Dr. O. Velfarin's readings showed Marcus's biological systems adapting to electromagnetic conditions that should have been instantly fatal. His heart rate had stabilized at an elevated but sustainable rhythm. His neural activity, while chaotic, showed clear patterns of conscious thought and environmental awareness. Impossible, whispered Lieutenant Kixthara. The electromagnetic forces are inducing electrical currents equivalent to multiple lightning strikes. His neural tissue should be completely disrupted. Professor Zethkari's colors cycled through patterns indicating profound scientific amazement. His brain is actually adapting to the electromagnetic environment. Look at these neural activity readings. He's developing new synaptic pathways in real time. Ambassador Thrix now clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. This contradicts everything we know about biological electromagnetic tolerance. How is he maintaining consciousness? Marcus's voice came through the communication system, clearer now as his vocal systems adapted to the electromagnetic interference. Exposure time at 15 seconds. Still conscious and aware. Motor control returning. Vision adapting to electromagnetic spectrum variations. Dr. Velfarin studied his medical readings with growing amazement. His cellular repair mechanisms are operating at accelerated rates. Tissue damage from electromagnetic induction is being repaired almost as fast as it occurs. 20 seconds of exposure, Marcus reported. Pain levels decreasing, actually starting to see patterns in the electromagnetic fields. They're beautiful. On the bridge, Captain Vorthek stared at his instruments in disbelief. The pod is maintaining stable trajectory despite electromagnetic forces that should be tearing it apart. How is the human providing navigational control? 25 seconds, Sarah announced. Marcus, you need to exit the storm field now. 30 seconds was our maximum safe exposure time. Marcus looked through the pod's viewing port at the electromagnetic chaos surrounding him. His human eyes, evolved to read electrical patterns in Earth's storm systems, were beginning to perceive structure in what had initially appeared to be pure chaos. The magnetic field lines weren't random. They formed complex, beautiful patterns that reminded him of aurora displays, but infinitely more complex.
Marcus!
Sarah called urgently. Response required. Exit the storm field immediately. Acknowledged, Marcus replied, engaging the pod's engines to carry him back toward normal space, beginning exit sequence. As the pod emerged from the storm's edge, the electromagnetic forces gradually decreased. Marcus felt his body beginning to return to normal function, though every nerve ending still tingled with residual electrical activity. Pod clear of electromagnetic field, Professor Zefkari announced. All monitoring systems show stable biological function. This is unprecedented. Marcus piloted the pod back toward the harmonic convergence, his hands still shaking from electromagnetic after effects. He had survived 30 seconds of direct exposure to forces that every galactic civilization considered instantly lethal. More than survived, he had remained conscious, aware, and functional throughout the experience. As the pod docked with the ship's shuttle bay, Marcus realized that he had just changed the galaxy's understanding of biological limits forever. The question now was whether this discovery would be seen as an opportunity or a threat by the various alien civilizations who had built their safety protocols around the assumption that such survival was impossible. The shuttle bay's atmosphere rushed back into the pod as systems equalized. Marcus could hear excited alien voices speaking in multiple languages as scientists and medical officers gathered around his landing site. Velfarin was the first to reach him as the pod's hatch opened, his metallic branches wielding medical scanners that immediately began analyzing Marcus's post-exposure condition. Mr. Chen, how do you feel? Marcus climbed slowly out of the pod, his legs still unsteady from electromagnetic after effects. Like I've been struck by lightning repeatedly, then struck by more lightning. But I'm alive, I'm conscious, and I remember everything. Professor Zefkari approached with his form cycling through colors Marcus had never seen before. Patterns that seemed to indicate emotions beyond the alien's normal range. Chen, you have just survived conditions that our most advanced computer models predicted would cause instant biological system failure. The implications of this achievement extend far beyond anything we previously thought possible. As medical teams surrounded him for immediate post-exposure examinations, Marcus looked back at the storm system through the shuttle bay's viewing port. Somewhere in that electromagnetic chaos lay answers to questions about biological survival that no alien species had thought to ask. And for the first time since proposing this experiment, Marcus began to wonder if 30 seconds had been enough to learn what the universe was willing to teach. The medical bay of the harmonic convergence hummed with activity as Dr. Veltharin completed the most comprehensive post-exposure examination in galactic medical history. Marcus sat on the examination table, still feeling residual electrical tingles throughout his nervous system, while alien medical instruments performed scans that would have been impossible just hours earlier.
Remarkable, Dr.
Veltharin muttered, his metallic branches adjusting scanners that showed Marcus's neural activity in three-dimensional holographic detail. Your synaptic density has increased by 12% since the exposure. New neural pathways have formed, and existing connections have strengthened. It's as if your brain treated the electromagnetic trauma as a learning experience. Professor Zefkari stood nearby, his crystalline form cycling through colors that indicated profound scientific excitement mixed with disbelief. Mr. Ron. Chen, the data from your exposure contradicts fundamental principles of electromagnetic biology that have been accepted for centuries. According to every predictive model, you should have suffered irreversible neural damage. Marcus flexed his fingers, feeling the enhanced electrical sensitivity that had developed during his time in the storm. Professor, I keep telling you, you're thinking about this wrong. Human biology doesn't try to resist electromagnetic forces. We adapt to them. Captain Vorthek entered the medical bay, his silver features reflecting concern and curiosity. Mr. Chen, we've received priority communications from 17 different scientific institutions across the galaxy. Word of your successful exposure has spread through academic networks faster than hyperspace communications. Everyone wants to know how this was possible. Before Marcus could respond, Sarah burst into the medical bay with her engineering pad clutched in one hand and an expression of barely contained excitement on her human features.
Marcus! You need to see this data analysis.
The storm wasn't just random electromagnetic chaos. There were patterns in the field fluctuations, and somehow you were responding to them. She activated a holographic display showing the electromagnetic readings from Marcus's pod during his exposure. Look at this. Every time the field intensity spiked, your neural activity changed in a corresponding pattern. It's almost like you were having a conversation with the storm. Dr. Belfarin's branches shifted to examine Sarah's data more closely. Fascinating. Mr. Chen's neural responses weren't just random reactions to electromagnetic stimulus. They showed clear patterns of adaptation and even anticipation of field changes. Ambassador Thrixnal entered the medical bay with his crystalline form clicking in patterns that indicated urgent communication needs. Mr. Bay. Chen, I have received direct communications from the Velkari High Council. They are requesting immediate consultation regarding applications of your electromagnetic resistance to crisis situations currently developing in 3 different star systems. Marcus looked around at the assembled aliens, feeling the weight of expectations that had grown far beyond his original proposal. Ambassador, what kind of crisis situations? The research station orbiting Proxima Vega has lost its electromagnetic shielding due to solar flare activity. The facility houses 1,847 beings from 15 different species, and current evacuation estimates suggest that rescue operations would take 6 weeks to complete. The electromagnetic environment around the station is now measuring Class 6 conditions. The implications hit Marcus immediately. You're suggesting that I could survive in that environment long enough to assist with evacuation operations. The possibility has been discussed, Ambassador Thrixnal confirmed. However, such a mission would require extended exposure to electromagnetic conditions, not the brief 30-second test you've just completed. Professor Zefkari's colors shifted to warning amber.
Mr.
Chen, while your initial exposure was successful, we have no data on the effects of prolonged electromagnetic contact. Extended exposure could cause cumulative damage that your biological systems cannot adapt to. Marcus considered the situation carefully. The successful 30-second exposure had proven that human biology could survive Class 7 electromagnetic conditions, but survival and functional operation were different things entirely. A rescue mission would require him to remain conscious, coordinated, and effective for hours or even days in environments that would instantly incapacitate any other known species. There's something else, Sarah said, consulting her engineering pad. The storm readings show that electromagnetic intensity varies significantly throughout different regions of the field. There might be corridors of lower intensity where extended exposure would be more manageable. Dr. Velfarin adjusted his scanners to examine Marcus's current neural activity. Mr. Chen, your brain is still adapting to the electromagnetic exposure from the initial test. Neural plasticity remains elevated, and new synaptic connections continue forming. It's possible that a second exposure might be even more successful than the first. Marcus stood up from the examination table, his legs steadier now as his nervous system continued recovering from electromagnetic aftereffects. I need to understand something. Is this just about the Proxima Vega emergency, or are you talking about establishing new protocols for electromagnetic survival across the galaxy? Captain Vorthek answered with formal authority. Mr. Chen, if human electromagnetic resistance can be documented and understood, it could revolutionize emergency response, deep space exploration, and scientific research throughout galactic civilization. No longer would electromagnetic phenomena represent absolute barriers to biological activity. The weight of that statement settled over the medical bay like a gravitational field. Marcus realized that his experiment had implications extending far beyond academic curiosity or personal achievement. He was potentially opening doorways to regions of space that had been considered permanently hostile to biological life. There's one more thing, Ambassador Thrixnal said, his crystalline features reflecting complex light patterns. The Galactic Council has received reports of an ancient alien artifact discovered in the electromagnetic chaos of the Maelstrom Nebula. The artifact appears to be a derelict spacecraft from an unknown civilization, but it's located in a Class 8 electromagnetic environment that no existing technology can penetrate. Marcus felt his heart rate spike at the mention of Class 8 conditions. Ambassador Class 8-7 represents electromagnetic forces beyond anything we've tested. We don't even know if human biology can survive that level of intensity, which is precisely why extended testing under controlled conditions is necessary, Professor Zathkari interjected. Mr. Chen, we propose conducting a series of graduated exposure tests, beginning with extended time in Class 6 conditions and progressing upward based on your adaptation responses. Dr. Veltharin's medical instruments continued monitoring Marcus's biological functions as the conversation proceeded. His neural adaptation from the initial exposure continues to evolve. I'm detecting new synaptic pathways forming in regions of the brain associated with electromagnetic perception. Mr. Chen may be developing sensory capabilities that no other known species possesses. Marcus walked to the medical bay's viewing port and looked out at the Helix Nebula storm system. The electromagnetic chaos that had nearly killed him 30 minutes ago now looked different to his enhanced perception. He could see patterns in the energy flows, structure in what had initially appeared to be pure randomness. I can see them, he said quietly. The electromagnetic field lines. They're not chaotic. They're organized in ways that don't make sense from a physics perspective, but I can perceive the organization directly. Sarah joined him at the viewing port, studying the storm with normal human vision. What do you mean? It looks like random energy discharge to me. Marcus pointed toward specific regions of the electromagnetic field. There are stable corridors running through the storm system, channels where the electromagnetic intensity drops to manageable levels. It's like the storm has internal structure that creates safe passages. Professor Zethkari approached with his colors cycling through patterns of intense scientific interest. Mr. Chen, you're describing electromagnetic field organizations that our most advanced instruments cannot detect. Are you suggesting that your enhanced perception allows you to navigate through previously impassable electromagnetic environments? The implications of that possibility created stunned silence in the medical bay. If humans could not only survive in electromagnetic chaos but actually navigate through it, then regions of space that have been considered permanently inaccessible might become reachable. Dr. Veltarin's instruments showed Marcus's neural activity spiking as his enhanced electromagnetic perception engaged. His brain is processing electromagnetic data in ways that don't correspond to any known sensory mechanisms. This appears to be an entirely new form of environmental awareness. Marcus turned away from the viewing port to face the assembled team. I'm willing to attempt extended exposure testing, but not just for academic research. If there are people trapped at Proxima Vega, and if I can help rescue them, then we need to move quickly. Captain Vorthek nodded with formal approval. The Proxima Vega situation is developing rapidly. Current estimates suggest that electromagnetic intensity around the station will continue increasing as solar flare activity escalates. Time is a critical factor. Ambassador Thraxnell's crystalline form reflected urgent light patterns. Mr. Chen, a rescue mission would require you to remain functional in Class 6 electromagnetic conditions for potentially several days. We have no data on human survival capabilities under such extended exposure. Then we need to get that data, Marcus replied firmly. How long would it take to set up extended testing protocols? Professor Zethkari's colors shifted to calculation mode. Given the urgency of the Proxima Vega situation, we could establish testing parameters within 6 hours. The storm system here provides perfect conditions for graduated exposure experiments. Sarah activated her engineering pad, already beginning preliminary calculations for extended exposure protocols. Marcus, we could modify the pod for longer duration testing. Add enhanced life support, better monitoring systems, and emergency extraction capabilities. Dr. Veltharin's branches adjusted medical scanners as he considered the implications of extended electromagnetic exposure. Mr. Da Chen. Such testing would push your biological systems into completely uncharted territory. We would be conducting medical research with no baseline data and no established safety margins. Marcus smiled grimly. Doctor, that's exactly what we did 30 seconds ago, and it worked out pretty well. As the team began planning for extended exposure testing, Marcus returned to the viewing port to study the storm system with his enhanced electromagnetic perception. The patterns he could now see suggested possibilities that extended far beyond rescue missions or academic research. If humans could learn to navigate through electromagnetic chaos, then the galaxy's most dangerous and unexplored regions might finally become accessible. But first, he had to survive long enough to prove that human electromagnetic adaptation was more than just a brief biological fluke. In a few hours, he would find out whether his species' evolutionary resilience extended to conditions that had never existed on Earth. The universe was about to receive another lesson in human stubbornness, and this time the stakes were measured in thousands of alien lives hanging in the balance at Proxima Vega. Marcus just hoped that human biology was as adaptable as human determination suggested. Through the viewing port, the Helix Nebula storm continued its eternal dance of electromagnetic chaos, unaware that it was about to become a testing ground for the limits of biological survival. In the patterns that only Marcus could now perceive, pathways of possibility stretched toward distant stars, where impossible rescues waited to be attempted. 6 hours later, Marcus Chen floated in the modified experimental pod at the edge of the Helix Nebula storm system, preparing for an exposure test that would either revolutionize galactic emergency response protocols or provide a dramatic demonstration of human biological limits. The pod had been extensively modified with enhanced life support systems, improved monitoring equipment, and emergency extraction capabilities that existed primarily to make the alien observers feel better about what they were attempting. Final systems check complete, Sarah announced through the communication array. All monitoring systems are green. Extended life support tested for 48-hour operation. Emergency extraction systems armed and ready. Marcus studied the electromagnetic storm through his enhanced perception, seeing patterns and pathways that had become clearer during the past 6 hours of neural adaptation. The safe corridors he had initially detected were more complex than simple low-intensity channels. They were dynamic structures that shifted and moved through the electromagnetic chaos according to principles that human intuition could grasp even when alien physics couldn't explain them.
Professor Zethkari's voice carried formal scientific authority through the pod speakers.
Mr. Chen, this extended exposure test will begin with 2 hours in Class 6 electromagnetic conditions, equivalent to the environment currently surrounding Proxima Vega Station. If you maintain stable biological function throughout that period, we will proceed to graduated increases in electromagnetic intensity. Dr. Veltherin added medical protocol information with his characteristic precision. All biological monitoring systems are recording baseline data. Your neural adaptation from the initial 30-second exposure continues to evolve. Synaptic density has increased by an additional 8%, and new neural pathways are still forming. You may experience enhanced electromagnetic sensitivity during this extended test.
Ambassador Thrixnell's communication carried urgent undertones.
Chen, while you conduct this test, the situation at Proxima Vega continues to deteriorate. The electromagnetic environment around the research station has intensified to Class 6. 3 conditions and solar flare predictions suggest it will reach Class 7 within 18 hours. Time is becoming critical for any potential rescue operation. Marcus checked his restraint systems one final time, noting how much more sensitive his hands had become to electrical fields since the initial exposure. He could feel the pod's electrical systems humming through the metal hull, a sensation that would have been impossible for baseline human perception to detect. Understood, Ambassador. Let's find out what humans can actually do in extended electromagnetic exposure. Marcus activated the pod's engines, beginning the approach toward the storm's Class 6 intensity region. Beginning approach to extended exposure zone. The transition from normal space into electromagnetic chaos was gradual this time, allowing Marcus to feel his enhanced nervous system adapting to increasing field strength. Unlike the violent shock of his initial exposure, the graduated approach let his human biology adjust incrementally to conditions that would have instantly disabled most alien nervous systems. Electromagnetic field strength approaching Class 6 threshold, Professor Zethkari announced. Biological monitoring shows elevated but stable function across all systems. As the pod entered the target electromagnetic zone, Marcus experienced the familiar sensation of every nerve ending lighting up with electrical fire. But this time, instead of overwhelming his nervous system, the electromagnetic forces felt like a natural extension of his sensory environment. His enhanced perception allowed him to read the electromagnetic field structure directly, seeing energy flows and field line configurations with unprecedented clarity. Class 6 electromagnetic exposure established, Marcus reported, his voice steady despite the massive electrical forces surging through his body. All systems functional. Enhanced electromagnetic perception is providing detailed environmental awareness. On the harmonic convergence, the assembled team of scientists and medical officers stared at their instruments in amazement. Dr. Veltherin's medical readings showed Marcus not just surviving in Class 6 conditions, but actually adapting to them in real time. His neural activity showed patterns of environmental analysis and navigation planning that suggested he was learning to use electromagnetic chaos as a sensory medium. Impossible, whispered Lieutenant Kixthara. His biological systems are actually becoming more stable as electromagnetic exposure continues. This contradicts every established principle of electromagnetic biology. Captain Vorthek studied the navigation data with growing excitement. His pod is maintaining precise position control despite electromagnetic forces that should make navigation impossible. How is he compensating for field fluctuations that our instruments can barely detect? Marcus piloted the pod through the electromagnetic environment with growing confidence. using his enhanced perception to read field patterns that revealed optimal navigation paths. I can see stable corridors throughout this region. Electromagnetic intensity variations create channels of lower field strength that could support extended biological activity. Professor Zethkari's colors cycled through patterns indicating profound scientific revelation. Mr. Chen, you're describing electromagnetic field structures that our theoretical models suggest should be impossible. Are you certain about these stable corridors? More than certain, Marcus replied, guiding the pod through a complex navigation sequence that followed electromagnetic field lines invisible to alien instruments. I can map them in 3 dimensions. The electromagnetic chaos isn't random. It's organized according to principles that human intuition can read directly. Sarah's voice carried excitement and concern in equal measure. Marcus, you've been in class, 6 exposure for 47 minutes. How do you feel? Marcus considered the question carefully. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by electromagnetic forces, he felt increasingly connected to the storm environment. His nervous system had not just adapted to the electrical chaos, it had learned to interpret it as environmental data more detailed than any conventional sensory system could provide. Better than I should, he admitted. The electromagnetic field isn't just survivable, it's informative. I can read energy flows, predict field fluctuations, and navigate through regions that looked impassable from outside the storm. Dr. Veltharen's instruments showed biological changes that redefined the boundaries of known adaptation. Mr. Chen, your neural plasticity continues accelerating. Your brain is literally rewiring itself to process electromagnetic data as a primary sensory input. This represents evolutionary adaptation occurring in real time. Ambassador Thrixnal's communication carried urgent authority. Mr. Chen, based on your current adaptation success, the Galactic Council has approved emergency deployment to Proxima Vega. A fast courier ship is already en route to your position with specialized rescue equipment. The implications of that statement hit Marcus with the force of a lightning strike. In less than 2 hours, he had progressed from experimental test subject to the galaxy's only hope for rescuing nearly 2,000 beings trapped in an electromagnetic environment that would kill any other rescue team instantly. Ambassador, what's the timeline for the Proxima Vega mission? 8 hours travel time to reach the system, then potentially days of operation in Class 6 to Class 7. Electromagnetic conditions while coordinating evacuation procedures. Mr. Chen, this mission will require sustained electromagnetic exposure far beyond anything we've tested. Marcus guided the pod through increasingly complex electromagnetic terrain, his enhanced perception revealing navigation possibilities that opened up entirely new approaches to rescue operations. I'll need detailed information about the research station's layout, evacuation protocols, and communication systems that can function in electromagnetic chaos. Professor Zethkari's voice carried scientific excitement mixed with practical concern. Mr. Chen, the station's communication systems were designed for normal electromagnetic environments. Standard equipment will not function in Class 6 conditions or higher. Then we'll have to develop new communication methods, Marcus replied, already beginning to formulate plans based on his growing understanding of electromagnetic field manipulation. Sarah, could we design communication systems that work with electromagnetic field modulation rather than against it? Sarah's engineering expertise engaged immediately.
Theoretically possible, but we'd need to understand how your electromagnetic perception actually works.
Marcus, can you describe exactly what you're detecting? Marcus piloted the pod through a particularly complex region of the electromagnetic field while explaining his enhanced sensory experience. It's like seeing sound, if that makes sense. The electromagnetic fields have texture, rhythm, and harmonic patterns. I can feel field strength variations as pressure changes, detect field line orientations as directional information, and read field fluctuations as temporal patterns. Dr. Veltharen's medical analysis provided scientific context for Marcus's description. His neural adaptations are creating entirely new sensory processing capabilities. Brain regions normally associated with visual and auditory processing are being repurposed for electromagnetic data interpretation. 2 hours of Class 6 exposure completed, Professor Zethkari announced. All biological systems remain stable. Mr. Chen has achieved sustained function in electromagnetic conditions that no other known species could survive for more than seconds. Marcus felt ready to push the testing further. Professor, I'm ready to attempt Class 7 conditions. If I'm going to operate a Proxima Vega when the electromagnetic environment intensifies, I need to know my actual limits. The request created immediate debate among the monitoring team. Class 7 conditions represented electromagnetic forces at the theoretical threshold of what their instruments could meaningfully measure, and far beyond anything that biological systems were thought capable of surviving. Captain Vorthek's voice carried command authority. Mr. Chen, class, exposure, represents forces equivalent to multiple simultaneous lightning strikes sustained indefinitely. Even if your initial 30-second exposure was successful, extended class 7 conditions could cause cumulative damage that overwhelms your adaptive capabilities. Captain, respectfully, we won't know my actual limits until we test them. If the Proxima Vega situation deteriorates to class 7 conditions, I need to know whether rescue operations remain possible. Marcus adjusted the pod's trajectory towards the storm region where electromagnetic intensity reached class 7 levels. Through his enhanced perception, he could see the field structure becoming more complex and dynamic, with energy flows that created 3-dimensional patterns of beautiful and terrifying intensity. Ambassador Thrixnall's communication carried formal protocol authority. Mr. Chen, the Galactic Council has authorized you to attempt Class 7 testing if you judge it safe to do so. However, you are reminded that you represent the galaxy's only known capability for electromagnetic rescue operations. Your survival takes precedence over experimental data gathering. Marcus smiled at the irony of being told that his safety was more important than the experiment he had volunteered for. Ambassador, noted and understood. Beginning approach to Class 7 electromagnetic region. As the pod entered the storm's most intense region, Marcus felt electromagnetic forces that would have instantly killed him before his initial adaptation surged through every cell in his body. But instead of causing damage, the massive electrical energies seemed to enhance his connection to the electromagnetic environment. His perception expanded to encompass field patterns spanning light minutes of space, and his understanding of electromagnetic navigation deepened exponentially. Class 7 electromagnetic exposure achieved, Marcus reported, his voice carrying through communication systems that should have been instantly disabled by the electrical chaos around them. Enhanced perception is providing unprecedented environmental awareness. I can see electromagnetic structures that extend throughout this entire storm system. Dr. Veltathan's instruments registered biological changes that redefine the concept of adaptive evolution. His neural adaptation has entered exponential development. Synaptic density is increasing at rates that should be biologically impossible. Mr. Chen is literally evolving new sensory capabilities in real time. Through the storm's electromagnetic chaos, Marcus began to perceive structures that suggested the presence of artificial patterns, electromagnetic signatures that looked almost like navigational beacons or communication arrays, but operating on principles that no known technology could explain. Professor, Marcus said slowly, his voice carrying a note of wonder that transcended scientific excitement. There's something in here. Artificial structures, hidden in the electromagnetic field patterns. This storm isn't just natural phenomenon. Someone or something has been using it. The implications of that discovery would reshape galactic civilization's understanding of electromagnetic phenomena, ancient alien technology, and the true scope of what biological adaptation could achieve. But first, Marcus had to survive long enough to share what he was learning in the depths of electromagnetic chaos that no other being in the galaxy could perceive. As the courier ship carrying rescue equipment raced towards his position, Marcus Chen floated in the heart of a cosmic storm, evolving capabilities that would either save thousands of lives or provide the galaxy's most spectacular demonstration of human overreach. Either way, the universe was about to learn that the word impossible held different meanings for species that had learned to survive by refusing to accept limitations. Through electromagnetic chaos that sang with alien purposes, a human being prepared to attempt the galaxy's first impossible rescue mission, armed with nothing but biological adaptability and the stubborn human conviction that someone, somewhere, was counting on him to succeed.